I've asked the Globe partners from the U.S. Partner Forum to present in the coming weeks so they can share a little bit about themselves and their partnerships. So we can see the new members and also get a refresher on the members that represent you. So Anne is leading us off today. Anne has been, this is her second time on the U.S. Partner Forum. Is that right, Anne? So this is your second kind of time through. She served as the chair before.
There again.
And now she's serving again. So it's great that she's kicking off, because you should kick off with the chair. I think it's just that Anne shows up and volunteers and everyone else just stays quiet. This is not the kind, this is not the technique I would personally recommend. But we are very grateful to have Anne do that. And I love the fact that Anne is from an informal science center. And she's doing some really cool stuff. I hope you talk about all the cool stuff you do, at least pre-COVID, for training teachers and working with students, because you have done some really cool stuff. And then during COVID, you did some really cool Facebook posts and things like that. So that was really awesome too, using Globe. So I hope you talk about all these things. And now I've stole your thunder.
I basically have nothing left to talk about except to apologize for being late. I'm having time zone meltdown, apparently. So when I signed up, whatever I did to put it on my calendar, it did not convert to the central time zone. So we have that, which was kind of fun and like not what I was expecting to happen. So thank you, Jen, for emailing me and reminding me, because I was, just kind of like in a zone. So again, thank you for allowing me this time to talk about my partnership. I am Ann Lewis. I am Special Projects Director at the South Dakota Discovery Center in Pierre, South Dakota. And I've been a Globe partner since 2015. I got trained in Globe I believe in 2012. A colleague and I went to Purdue, and I was trained by Stephen Smith. And so that was a lot of fun. I actually, to save money, because we were doing this totally on our own dime, we camped. And so we would go and spend the day, doing Globe stuff on the university. And then at night we would drive back to the campground. And so that was kind of fun. That's also how I did all the on-campus requirements for my master's degree from Hamline University, which is in St. Paul. So when they'd have, it was a class, it was really a master's design for classroom teachers. So they had a lot of on-campus stuff during the summer. And so again, I would go over and camp. And so you'll see this is a theme that I talk about. At the Discovery Center, my position is, like I said, Special Projects Director. And really that it's kind of morphed over the last few years, especially last year, just before COVID had hit, we got a new director, and she had been there previously. So that I kind of feel sorry for her, because to take on leadership and then all of a sudden have everything fall apart. But mainly where my position has been going the last few years is I do earth and environmental science outreach, and increasingly with a focus on citizen science. So I'm funded primarily through a grant from the US EPA to our State Department of Environment and Natural Resources, to us to do watershed information and education outreach. So My favorite protocols, and I'm sorry, Jen, I know you love mucking and everything, but mine are anything hydrology related. So I do a lot of water transparency is probably my back pocket protocol. The one that if I only have time for one in a workshop or a demonstration or something like that, that is the one that I will do. I'm going to skip ahead and instead talk about the professional development I facilitate. And I'll show you the promo video for this year. Okay, can you see, it says the Tails Project in Badlands National Park. Can somebody put in the chat if they see that?
It's all good.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, here we go. So that session, and this is sort of a hallmark of how I have used Globe for professional development with teachers. One of the experiences that I've had is that teachers, especially now that they have the training, just going to learn to do protocols without any sort of lesson around it was kind of a frustration for them. The feedback I've gotten is, I could do this on my own. Show me how to bring this into my class. So they're more interested in the pedagogy, at least the teachers that I've worked with, that goes around old protocols. So what you saw there was my attempt, my process of, we give teachers a really rich, immersive experience that includes Globe. And then it's up to them. We strategize and we show them exemplars, but it's really up to them to then develop the lesson that they can use to bring it into their classrooms. In this way, we can get a lesson bank. I still haven't developed that. That's been on my list to do for quite a while. And this also speaks to a belief, a deeply held belief that I have, that when you give teachers a really rich lived experience, that makes a really compelling teaching artifact for them to use in their teaching. Data is just out there data until it means something, until there's some sort of connection with it. And I like to say, your data is like your children, your own are the most interesting. So when you give people data, and it can be really simple data, like surface temperature. They always want to try it out, and then they always want to know what it means, compared to something else. Whereas you could give them the exact same data set, and people would be like, okay, that, there'd be a moderate interest, but there wouldn't be that hook because it's not theirs. So that's my goal, is to equip teachers with these personal connections to their students, personal connections to their artifacts that they're using with their students. Because the next best thing when you're in a classroom, when you're working with students, is to give them something you've created that's not part of a canned curriculum. So, and we go into all of that in the workshop. The other thing I do, I have used Globe for, that's really been very useful this year, is we had a pivot, like everybody else, to online water festivals. As I started out saying earlier, is that I use a lot of Globe, the hydrology protocols, and I actually used Discoveries at Willow Creek and All About Earth for 2 online activities. And I'm going to show you, let's see, I think we're back here, and I'm going to collapse that and go over here. So this is our online water festival here. And teachers will come here. We haven't quite gotten the trunk rental out, but let me go ahead and show you the Discoveries at Willow Creek water temperature activity. And this is about using a thermometer. Now, this is targeted towards 5th graders. So we're not that concerned about teachers reporting data yet. What's more of interest to me is that students are having an authentic experience with instrumentation and seeing how it works, and looking at a thermometer and handling it and seeing the gradations, and that when the temperature goes up, the little line goes up. That numeracy, all of that is really important, that you don't always get with a digital thermometer. So this one also, the way I do it is I'll go ahead and I'll start it. I also have a video for this one, and I think it'll be pretty self-explanatory.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Water Festival. My name is Anne, and I am talking to you from the banks of the Minnesota River, what the Lakota-speaking people call the Missouri River, here in Pierre, South Dakota. Today, we're going to be talking about water temperature, and we're going to be using Discoveries at Willow Creek, which is available at globe.gov if you look at the elementary Globe site. We'll also be using a thermometer. Later on, we'll be getting out our jar of river water. If you're a teacher and you want a classroom set of these, you have to supply your own water. The information is in the show notes, and unfortunately, this is available only to South Dakota teachers. Let's start by reading a little bit of the book, Discoveries at Willow Creek.
Okay, I'm just going to forward that a little bit. So it goes through, and then we stop at various points where the students, I start out with, I notice, what do you notice about the thermometer? And so we're really getting them to look at all the different pieces. And then the other activity that we do as part of this, and is, I have totally lost my Zoom screen. Where did you all go? Sorry about that. There you are. Is the Earth Systems video, and I'll go ahead and share that very quickly as well. Okay, so again, it's the same premise, and I'll get it started, and then we'll actually forward it through a little bit so you can see how the video works. I'm going to go ahead first, though, and put a link to this, the handout that I referenced in the chat. So, okay, here we go. Hello, welcome to the Water Festival. Today we're going to be talking about the world of water and how it interacts with the other worlds that are within the earth. Now, if you're wondering what do I mean by world of water and what these other worlds are, well, I simply mean the world of water is things like lakes, rivers, glaciers, and the other worlds are simply the world of rock and soil, the world of plants and animals, the world of air and wind. And we are going to spend some time looking at the connections between all these worlds, which incidentally have a scientific name. Let's go ahead and look. I think you might recognize some of these names. The world of water is known as the hydrosphere. Hydro meaning water, sphere meaning circle, like a world. Soil and rocks, that's the geosphere. Plants and animals, biosphere. And air is the atmosphere. I bet you recognize that one. We're going to start out. Okay, so I go ahead and I read the book and I get them all set up and help, starting to understand their the connections. And then we go into looking at the document, the handout that I just gave you. And what that is, it's a detailed explanation of how the world of water, the hydrosphere, interacts with the other spheres. And it's very explicit. And I learned that you have to be that explicit with fifth graders. When I piloted this lesson, and I piloted virtually, which was kind of an interesting process, the students were really good at saying, I see the hydrosphere and I see the geosphere. But when I asked them to say, okay, how are they interacting? How are they connected? That was really tough for them. And actually, when I've taught this in workshops, I've had teachers like, well, I don't know. I mean, they know, but just plainly stating it is kind of a challenge. So I asked them throughout the video to stop and look at their sheets and find those connections. And, when I was doing this in person, I actually had the students read the connections out loud. So I'm going to share my screen again and show you how they practice looking at the connections. Essentially what I did is I made video snippets and I asked them to find the water. I asked them to find the other spheres and then look at their sheets and find the connections. And I think it will not surprise you about my video. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again and you'll see the video. Okay, here we go. So let's just try it. Go ahead and open up that Google Doc I put in the chat and tell me what spheres did you see and how were they interacting? And you can go ahead and unmute. I think we're small enough that.
Wind from the atmosphere blowing the grasses.
Yeah, and that's wind to that's atmosphere to biosphere. And yes, Jen, it was raining. It was raining and there was a bison there. And you didn't see it in the video, but I preference it to find the water, you have to listen. So I'll go ahead and I'll share the screen again. And because what I do is I then go ahead and run this again, this time with the quote unquote, the spheres that I saw connected and what I saw happening. So, okay, go ahead and. Did you hear the water? That was rain. Okay, welcome back. What did you see? Let's run the video again, and this time I will show you a few of my ideas on how those spheres were connected. Okay, so and they get increasingly more complicated. The first one starts out with some water running over the ground. The next one is the rain. This next one, we won't do the whole, but I'll just show you. I'll go straight to the end there. So show you this one. So, and then we have one more, and this one is perhaps the most challenging. But if you look at your sheet, there are clues that will help you figure it out. Any ideas what that one was? It was a beetle. Yes, it was a tumblebug. Sometimes somewhat improperly called a dung beetle.
Why is it improperly called that?
A dung beetle, because a dung beetle is actually a different species, I believe. Maybe a different genus, but this is a tumblebug. They're both beetles, and they both like to crawl around on dung. So if you look at the document I linked, it talks about organic matter, parts that are dead or shed, as I call it, from living things, drying out and then being recycled back into the soil. So this was actually a fun one to make. It ends up with me encouraging the students to go make their own videos, even if they don't have a phone. They can just make hand videos and look outside, because whatever we saw in the videos is going on outside right now all the time. It's just a matter of going and looking for it. When I did this with a teacher, I encouraged the students to go and make their videos. And she said, even though it was totally optional, she said about 8 or 9 of them did. So there was a little bit of a hook and an interest, which I'm very gratified to have seen. I do have these connections built out for other sphere-to-sphere interactions, like atmosphere to pedosphere and pedosphere to, I guess I'm pulling a blank. I'm like totally geosphere, pedosphere, biosphere, hydrosphere. Anyway, so that you kind of are getting them all. When I field tested this with my colleagues, it was too much to have them find all the different spheres at once. So we focused in on the anchoring it on the hydrosphere, looking specifically for that lens. So yeah, so I feel like I've used my 20 minutes and then some. Any questions or comments or feedback? This is still very much a iterative process for us. We're putting this out and we're seeing what kinds of responses we get so we can make it better.
I really appreciate the virtual space and making it active, as much as possible. That's difficult to do. So you and take it outside.
And one of the things I think will happen now is that teachers, having been sort of shoved off the end of the dock into this world, will become more comfortable with it. So currently about less than half of our state's fifth graders are served by a water festival. And starting one up at this point is very prohibited because, you know, schools already have their field trips, you know, all the reasons you're aware of. I think offering this virtual option where they can sign up and they'll get a trunk with these, you know, with the thermometers and books and some other things that they can facilitate, you know, a special activity once a day throughout the week. I think that is probably how we're going to reach those students we haven't been able to reach up till now. I also wanted to say that one of the things we're very aware of here in South Dakota is the keeping in mind that like about 9% of our school population is Indigenous, and trying to make these videos relevant and meaningful and inclusive, which is why I referred to the Missouri River as the Minnesota. When you teach Earth systems, I have to be really thoughtful how I teach the connections, particularly in predominantly Indigenous communities, because the biosphere means plants and animals. It does not mean things that are alive, and we have to be very clear in Western science, things that are alive breathe, eat, and grow. But in Indigenous ways of knowing, things can be inanimate by Western standards, yet still have a spirit. And so when I used to teach this, and some of you have heard this story, when I used to teach this, I was very Western and, you know, and I'd be at the school, like on the tribal college, and I'd get a lot of this, you know, smile, you know, very pleasant, but just like, and then when I switched the way I taught it to distinguish the Western way of knowing and be very clear and explicit about that, and I saw a lot more head nodding. So I don't know how many of you interact with Indigenous communities, but Earth systems really underpins their way of knowing it to a degree that even in Western science, it does not. And so a lot of thought and care is required. So.
Any questions for Anne? I just want to say I'm always super, super jealous and hope that one day my plans align with your professional development in the Badlands because that looks amazing. And there's no way I can have a bison in New Hampshire show up on my video demonstrations.
And that's it. I mean, and one of the things I want teachers to feel is that they can go to their state park or their national park. They could go to Acadia, which is right up the road, from New Hampshire, and film the puffins, a little, and bring that back and talk about what are the Earth systems happening there. Whatever charismatic megafauna you have in your biome. Encourage your teachers to go out and get it and bring it back to their classrooms. I mean, not literally, of course, that would be bad to bring a puffin back to school, but you know what I mean. So anyway, that's my soapbox, and I appreciate you sharing your time. As the U.S. Partner Forum, as we develop our plans and our strategies, one of us will be back in a few weeks or a couple of months to talk about our work and any support we may need from the partnerships at large.
Thank you, Anne. It's a beautiful presentation, and it's a absolutely breathtaking views. It's a beautiful land, and I am in awe how you put together the video. I thought initially that you used the iMovie, but it looks like you used Adobe for creating that movie, or maybe somebody helped you out with that. But in any case, it's a beautiful tool to use in pedagogy. Yes.
Yeah. Pro tip: I used StreamYard for the movie, and then that was everything. And it was a one take, which means I actually ended up doing about 10 takes to get a 15 to 20-minute segment that was coherent and, actually useful. I don't know that I would recommend that. I do need to up my movie making skills so I can do segments, so I'm not having to create 20 minutes of film more or less flawlessly. That's a big ask.